All right, we're going to continue with our media availabilities here in advance of Sunday's AAA Texas 500. We are now joined by Kevin Harvick, driver of the number 4 Busch Beer Ducks Unlimited Ford with Stewart Haas Racing. And Kevin has won the past 2 playoff races here at Texas. We will get started right here with Jerry in the middle, and then we'll go around. We'll go to Jerry and then Bob.
Jerry Jordan, kicking the tires.net. Kevin, I think you may have heard the question. If you make it to Homestead, it's the same thing I asked Jenny. Who do you think those other 2 drivers are, and who do you not want to see go up against you there?
Yeah, I don't know. Just have to wait and see for 2 more weeks.
Go to Bob.
I mean, they're not really.
Bob Hockers, Fox Sports. As far as playoff, or as far as driver code goes, at this point in the season, where do you look on how non-playoff drivers should be racing playoff drivers?
Non-playoff?
Yes.
Yeah, you know, for me, the only thing I can relate to that is just where I feel like I would be if I were not in the playoffs, and that's just I don't want to be in the storyline unless I'm racing for a win. And I think from that standpoint, you don't want to be the one that ruins somebody else's chance at having a championship. And the further you go into this, the higher the stakes get. And so I can't speak for anybody else, but I know that that's the feeling that I've had when I'm not in the position to have a chance to win it, because you just don't want to be a part of the story.
Additional questions for Kevin? Go here to Dustin, Nate, and then back to Bob.
Dustin Long, NBC Sports. I have a couple questions. In line of what you were just saying there, when it comes to Miami, when there's just 4 and you've had the opportunity of racing for it, how much are guys getting in your way, and how much of an issue is that? I think at times you've heard some people say teammates have kind of made it a little bit difficult to get around. Is that acceptable, or should they just pull over and let the 4 guys racing for the championship do it because of so much is at stake in one race?
Yeah, I think the guys that do this on a weekly basis, that you know when too much is too much, and when somebody's racing for something and you just need to get out of the way. Because you've got 1 or 2 or 3 of them behind you, and so most everybody knows when too much is too much, and that's when you have scenarios like last week where you have Joey and Denny 1 in, 1 out. It becomes more difficult than probably needs to be. So it just depends on those types of scenarios. Those are usually the ones that become more difficult. I think as far as the teams go, I think it's you still the guys that have done this before, just they don't want to be a part of the story, and you don't want that controversy dragging around. If you're the guy racing for the win, you don't want the story to be your teammate held him up and that's why you won the championship.
Also, you've recently just went a full calendar year without a speeding penalty. And
oh, thanks. Appreciate that.
That's what I'm here for. You can yell at me on Sunday.
Okay.
I'm just curious, with everything that goes on, all the things you have to monitor, all the cars and all the action, I mean, how tough is it to maintain that, and while you're still trying to get as much as you can get? Or have you purposely, because you have fast cars for the most part, that you don't have to be as aggressive on pit road?
Yeah, we've been as aggressive on pit road as we've always been. I feel like, and I tell our young guys this, whether I have something to do with them or not. I mean, we still practice every week. Every week we go up and down pit road, in and out of the pit box, hard on the pit road, hard off of pit road. It's just not something that you can let your guard down with. I think as you look at, I feel like that's one of the reasons that our team is still in it. I don't feel like we've had that knockout speed that the Gibbs cars have had on a week-to-week basis. We've had it a few times and been able to capitalize on that. But, I feel like we've done a good job at minimizing the mistakes and we had 3 more weeks to do that, and hopefully you didn't jinx us. But it's been those types of scenarios. It's been, solid execution of things, except for a few weeks that we've had here lately. But for the most part, that have kept us in the mix all year.
How different are these playoffs for you? Because you say you don't have the knockout speed. You often have the knockout speed.
Yeah. Well, I think as you look at that, it reminds me a lot of 2017, where we just where we switched to Ford. And, I think this year has been, we have had the speed, and it's just been sporadic at different races as to whether you hit it, don't hit it. But the execution has still been our number one, really been our number one thing that we've done that has kept us in the mix, in my opinion, consistently on a week-to-week basis.
Go back to Nate.
Nate Ryan, NBC Sports. You kind of just answered it there, Kevin, but no, it's okay.
Wait, I thought you guys were on the same team.
I know. We should have consulted before we asked these questions. So you've got a shot at being in the championship round for the 5th time in 6 years. But where would you say you are relative, where the team is relative to those previous championship appearances?
My team or the organization?
Your team. I guess both. Your team and organization, because it's been about a month since your last top 5, and you guys are running well, but it doesn't seem like you're quite running like title caliber.
Well, we've done nothing but shoot ourselves in the foot the last few weeks. Started last at Kansas and crashed at Talladega, and I don't know what we did last week. I guess it was just typical Martinsville. So, I feel like we probably had top 5 cars in those 3 weeks. At the end of the race, and didn't have that solid execution finish, in front of where you probably should have. I think the experience of the number 4 team and the execution and the things that we've done have, definitely made the most out of what we've had as an organization. I think as an organization we haven't been as consistent with the speed as I think we would like to be, and it's difficult. We started behind, guessed the wrong direction, migrated back to the same direction, we've just been a number of different directions, and still not 100% sure every week of where we need to be with all the different things that you can do to the car from an aero side of things. So it's definitely been a fight every single week in order to get the finishes that we've had and keep ourselves in contention. And I think for us, the experience and the continuity of the race team and the experience of being around each other has allowed us to get the most out of everything that we've got.
Go to Bob, Woody, and then Mark.
Bob Hockers, Fox Sports. They're going to put traction compound on the top of the grooves next week at Phoenix. Were you part of any of those discussions, and how do you think it'll change the racing?
I have been a small part of those discussions. I think NASCAR has done a good job of keeping most all of us in the loop as to what they're thinking. And when you look at Phoenix, it wasn't a great race, for us to watch at the beginning of the year. So, I think that the traction compound is a good option. I think as you look at some of these racetracks where it's kind of changed the complexion of the race, and we have to have options. We have to have more than one groove, and that particular race just migrated to, one groove, and I hope that this opens it up a little bit.
Go to the far right to Woody.
Woody came with MRN. Kevin, speaking of Phoenix, with the change of the start-finish line flip-flopping, on the restarts there, they've been kind of intense, more so than they have in years past almost everywhere. But with having all that extra room on those restarts and you're sometimes starting in a curve, how different is that than the way you have to restart there compared to what you've always been doing?
Yeah, it's just it's an awkward restart zone, just because you wind up in that corner and you wind up in an awkward spot on the racetrack, and then you go into that dog leg and it winds up being able to go as many lanes as you feel like going, and usually that means if you go too far that the guys that are inside of you on the racetrack are probably going to come straight up the racetrack, but you're going slow enough to where you can use that whole apron in turns 3 and 4 as well, like all the way down to the wall. So at some point traffic has to merge as you come off of what used to be turn 4, now turn 2. you know, in order to make it in between the two walls. So we've seen a couple accidents that have happened on the exit of turn 2, and you know, it's a lot different. You'd think they just moved the start-finish line, and you know, it's affected the restarts way more than it affects the finishes of the races for sure. But it's a cool little area, you know, that they've created down on that end of the racetrack with the start-finish line and the grandstands and the fan zone and everything that's on that end of the finish line. So aside from all the chain link fence and the maze to get in and out, we could have a heck of a maze if we just made those fences solid and try to find our way from point A to point B to get out of the place. But it's created a neat little zone down on that end of the racetrack.
I'm going to stay in the far right to Mark and then wrap up with Chris.
Mark Arrow, PRN. Last week after the race at Martinsville, Martin Truex Jr. talked about the intensity level just keeps getting ratcheted up every single year, it seems like. Do you feel that intensity? I mean, you've always been one like, look, the pressure doesn't get to me. Nothing's more than what I dealt with when I started my career in Cup. But do you feel the intensity is greater as this playoff starts to mature? We've now moved into a number of years.
Yeah, you know, I don't think it's any greater personally, aside from the first year. I think after the first year, everybody learned that you know, you had to make some things happen every once in a while, and had to put it all on the line, you know, for your team, and when you had those situations to do that. So, you know, I think you know, you look at Joey, and he's usually pretty put together, and the pressure of the situation and the things that he lost last week, and you know, kind of put himself in a position where kind of caused some chaos, and so it's, you know, it's even Matt Kenseth, you know, you look back at Martinsville, he lost his mind, and that never really happened with Matt, you know. So it's not any more intense than it was. Maybe there's some guys getting to experience that, you know, for themselves in different situations, but we've seen some of the most mild-mannered people and guys that are, you know, pretty good at handling themselves lose their minds. So I'd say it's pretty close to the same. Oh, I don't want anything. I don't even want to have a comment about it. Let those guys have to answer the questions.
I'm going to wrap up with Chris.
Yeah, Chris Knight, CatchMess.com. Kevin, have you talked to Fox about being back in the broadcast booth next year for Xfinity? And if so, how many races do you think you'll broadcast?
Yeah, right now we're just focusing on driving the car and making sure that we get through the end of the year, and worried about all that secondary stuff later. What's that? Look, at this point, I don't have to do anything that I don't want to do. I do the things that I enjoy, and you know, try to enjoy, and that's something that I have enjoyed, and so it's definitely something I've had fun doing, but you know, it's just not something I have been focused on currently.
All right, Kevin, thanks for joining us. Good
Yep,
luck this
thanks.
weekend.